All right, well, thank you for your patience. We're waiting for one more one more panelist to show up. He'll be joining us soon and just jumping right in. But this is our session on handling first mile networking challenges. And we're going to be taking a look at the challenges of getting a live stream out of a bandwidth constrained location, whether that's a junior college football field, a concert venue, a rural house of worship, or perhaps an outdoor wedding. Our panelists each have lots of hands-on experience with this topic, and they'll be sharing their perspectives on the things that they have used to solve these challenges, how they've made this work with various technologies, including bonded cellular devices, satellite dishes, and streaming protocols that are designed to be more resistant to networking issues. So first, we'll start off with just introductions real quick. My name is Chris Knowlton. I work at a company called BlueFrame Technology, and before that at Wowza and at Microsoft. We'll have our panelists each introduce themselves and talk just a little bit about what they do and really briefly, what kind of situations you face as far as first mile networking challenges. So let's start with you, Casey.
Hi, I'm Casey Charvet. I'm the founder and manager of Gigcasters. We provide live streaming engineering services and production services. We also have a white label platform mainly tailored towards pay-per-view and subscription content producers. And we've also designed and made our own encoders, the Hydra encoders. And this rose out of a need from what we saw while doing these outside productions and all of these sort of constrained scenarios and ups and downs. So that's a encoder built from the field up.
Cool.
I'm Troy Witt from Take One Productions, takeonedigital.com, and we are a live event production company. So we are in this kind of challenge every day with clients who call us for jobs that maybe tomorrow, maybe 2 weeks from now, but rarely more time than that for a lead time, never time for a site visit. And we need to be nimble and able to say yes to our clients getting that stream out from wherever it may be, whether it is outdoors, whether it's a hotel, a university, or whatnot. So yeah, we've looked into and used many of the solutions that we're going to talk about.
And I am Jeff Tyler, digital media experience lead for Microsoft's events team. We live stream about 500 events per year, but they're kind of from all over the globe, so it's a very, very similar thing to what you're talking about, where it's our tentpole events that are brand moments, and we have months of planning. We can go on site and bring in fiber and satellite and test everything in advance. And we also have the things that come up and somebody in some global subsidiary says, hey, we have this event in 2 days and it's in China and we need to stream it, help. And so then it's like, okay, so we'll help you, get that feed out of your location and manage it from there. So that's sort of where we come into this piece.
Cool, thanks. And then our fourth panelist who'll be joining shortly is Tim Siglin. Many of you have probably read his articles from various streaming media publications, and you'll see him actually out on the show floor in the streaming media booth interviewing folks today. So he'll be joining us. Right now, I believe he's interviewing Keith Wims from Elemental, who just did the keynote, so he's trying to get that finished up. For you folks, oh, that was interesting. We just lost, there it goes. See, these are the kinds of challenges we talk about, right? So this is meant to be an interactive session, so we do encourage you to raise your hand if you have questions. If you hear something that's interesting and you want to follow up on it, feel free to raise your hand and ask the question. We'll try and work it in right away. We can also take questions at the end, but it's usually better when you think of it to bring it up so we can address it right then. So feel free to make that part of the conversation. All right, so I'll kick off with some of the questions that we were talking about in terms of the technologies. So I'll start with bonded cellular. We're focusing here today on basically 3 solution sets. I mentioned them earlier: bonded cellular, satellite, and some of the resistant protocols. So we'll start with bonded cellular, in which a single device takes a live stream, splits up the stream across multiple network connections. Thank you. You got a loose wire somewhere?
I know about jiggling cables in the middle of a production. It never happens to anybody.
Right. Okay, so we split up those network streams across multiple cellular data connections, and sometimes Wi-Fi, sends it over the internet, and then reconstitutes the stream on a receiver or a computer running software at the other end. And so there are a number of companies that you'll see at the show, in fact, that have been working on this for a number of years. Folks like Teradek, LiveView, and TVU Networks as examples of folks you may have heard of. The other thing we might do is just turn off this laptop because it's being so distracting. Is there?
There we go. Oh, now it's just going to be blue. It's all right.
It's a calming color.
It's all very exciting. It's how we keep it interesting. Keep your focus up here. Anyway, panelists, thinking of bonded cellular, what have your experiences been with bonded cellular solutions, and how well did they work for you in your scenarios? Anybody want to take that first?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we started using LiveU, I think, about 2 years ago, and it's been an awesome option for us, frankly, especially for places where, again, we get these last-minute things in some other region. In addition to the units we own, you can rent them pretty much around the world, and that's great because they're on those local cellular networks. The fact that it's got, usually 6 cell cards in the main unit, you can add the extender, which gives you 6 more, but it can also join the Wi-Fi and the house network as well, and it'll bond all across them so that wherever it can get the strongest signal out, it'll do that. The reason we liked LiveU and went with that, we did try the other ones as well, like you said, the TVU and the like the Teradek bond, where it's at the LiveU, it's you pay a monthly service and they handle all the cellular card billing. And some of the other ones may do this now as well. When we were first looking into it, that was the only one with that model. Whereas I know at the time with the bond, it was you bring your own cell cards. So then you might have 6 cellular bills you have to keep track of and deal with. So we really like that, just sort of, you pay for it once and that's your service.
And is it just a flat fee across all the cellular
Yeah, exactly.
services?
It's sort of just a monthly service fee. And for the way in our company procurement works, just paying them one big check every year and covering all 12 months, way easier than the monthly
And how
stuff.
many cellular services do you get, or is it all like one service?
It's
but 6
basically
cards?
2, I think it's 2 Verizon LTE cards, 2 AT&T LTE cards, and 2 T-Mobile LTE cards. And then the extender just doubles that.
Okay.
But yeah, it's been rock solid for us.
Well, and I'll back you up one step though. Before bonded cellular always goes single cellular, which we were discussing a little bit earlier too, is you show up on a site and you don't even have, let's say you haven't bought into one of those platforms yet, and you say, I can hotspot my phone or something like that. And that, by going single cellular, you're really subject to a lot of bandwidth variation and stuff like that. So just to take the step backwards, bonded cellular, but bonding multiple networks together with multiple cards, you get not only extra bandwidth because AT&T might have better signal coverage here than Verizon does, but when that traffic from the freeway outside the hotel gets all stopped out there and everybody's checking Facebook while they're driving, nobody does that, but you see the bandwidth available go down on the Verizon network. You need a box that's going to navigate that and compress your signal even more so that it all gets across. And that's why you go with a bonded solution that is able to navigate the fluctuation in bandwidth and the fluctuation in bandwidth among the different cell carriers at the same time.
And as you mentioned, the adaptive bit rate, where it takes the back pressure and says, hey, I can't get out at this bit rate, so I'm going to lower the bit rate to whatever it can use. That's huge in scenarios where it's really an unknown. You test the day before and everything works great. Everyone comes on site and they're sitting in the back of the room streaming the show, taking up the bandwidth. It's going to change.
It's going to change a lot. And so we had, before we got into LiveU as well, we had a customer that we couldn't get the bandwidth at the hotel, and they said, well, can we just use our jetpack? And I said, oh, dear God.
I mean, you can.
You can, but what happened immediately, the second that literally the traffic on the freeway started up at 7 a.m., is all that bandwidth went way down, and then we had to stop our stream, change our compression settings, get our stream back started. Oh, that still wasn't enough compression to get in.
And a lot of encoders don't have a back pressure sensing in it, and can't adjust the bit rate on the fly. We use LiveU a lot too. Actually, we have an event in downtown LA today that we're engineering that's going to go out over LiveU. But to play devil's advocate, we've gone into many scenarios where you show up to the venue. Again, no site survey because that's how it goes.
Our clients wouldn't want to give us that.
Okay, where's Video World going to go? And they're like, down there in the basement, in the green room, from 40 years ago. And this is a big old brick theater in the middle of a downtown area. And, you're like, well, how are we going to get cell service down here? Or another scenario is you're doing a let's say, a motorsports event, and these tracks are way out, and maybe there's one tower around. Yep. And then 10,000 fans show up, and that bandwidth is gone. And so cellular is still, it's hard to predict the amount of available capacity. It's especially when you get into large capacity events.
And when you get out to smaller metro areas.
Yeah,
downtown, major city, you've got lots of stuff. I'll piggyback though on what you said about being down in the green room, in the basement, the sub-basement where there's no cell service, is we always creatively think though too, that if all I have to run is power and SDI to my transmitter, whatever form transmitter you're using, whether it's satellite or whatnot, I mean, because if you got a satellite truck, it's usually you're having to call the police department, get a parking variance so you can put them on the street. So if all I had to do is run 300 feet of SDI and AC to the roof of the building or to a balcony so that I can get signal to a cell transmitter to go out.
Yeah.
Oh, and I can do that on my own, and I don't have to call the police department, the zoning commission, and everybody else. That's super easy.
Yeah.
But
the same thing though, where with the LiveView extender, you can put the main LiveView base unit in one spot, run 500 feet of Cat 5 somewhere else, or Cat 6.
Is that unit legal in the States?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope so, because we use it.
It's the big, the big thing.
But
right?
I think to all your points, though, I think it's, we use this as usually not our primary streaming mechanism. We like to always go in with redundancy and diversity in technology, right? So that if something fails in some weird way, you have another option. So typically, this would be our backup solution, just for the reasons you mentioned. It's just, you can't predict the reliability that you're going to get on the day of the show, depending on local cellular traffic.
Yeah. Right. I saw a hand, so I'll have you ask your question while Tim Siglin comes up and joins us on stage.
So what happens after the live view? So it's coming, are you guys sending it straight from the live view cloud, or are you decoding it on your end?
So
can you repeat the question?
Okay, yeah. To repeat the question is, what do we do with the LiveView signal after it lands? And I guess we can expand a little bit more on the different workflow options there. So we take the LiveView signal into a LiveView head end, go back to baseband video, and then run that baseband video into an encoder in a rack and send that out over a regular IP connection.
And then there's a flip side. So what my company does is a little different than that. We can bring it back to our office, pull it out SDI, do something with it, and then stream it back out. But mostly our workflow is we go into the LiveView cloud where it recombines the signals from the multiple cell carriers. And then from LiveView directly, we can stream it to our endpoint, whether it's RTMP, Facebook, or a CDN. Or we then will take it from there and go to a service called, that we really like to use, called Switchboard Live. And then they handle splitting it out to multiple CDNs on the other end, whether it's multiple Facebook page, multiple Ustream, YouTube, or wherever.
Is that Jason Fulbrook?
Yeah, and it's all and that's all in the cloud. So because of course, if we're coming down to our office and our office is connected via AT&T Uverse, again, now we've made ourselves one single point of failure again.
Yeah, well, so yeah, the LiveView, I would say in sort of, I mean, maybe we should have gone into what is the first mile problem anyway, but yeah, totally agree with that. And that, we have our LiveView head end placed in a data center type facility and, redundant.
That's actually, we're actually doing
diesel generators,
pulling it back down
not
to baseband SCI, using the LiveView server that pulls it in. And that's at our head end, which is built the same way. It's everything there is redundant networks, redundant power, automated generators, all that. Multiple ISPs with different physical connections. So we are kind of bringing it from that unknown infrastructure to a known infrastructure. Right. But it's a similar thing with, going straight to the cloud makes sense for a lot of work.
I mean, we're a small company, and a lot of our productions are in the, under $5,000 budget, complete. And so if we don't have to even have a labor at the office or anything like that, we send a guy with a LiveView that we can either pre-provision or he can provision on site to what the endpoint is, and it just goes to the LiveView cloud, and then straight from LiveView's data center to the endpoint. Then, as I was saying earlier to him before we started, is that we like to pay our service providers to do what they do so that we don't have to add extra labor onto it if we don't need to.
So Tim, thanks for joining us. We've been talking about bonded cellular. I don't know if you have any thoughts on bonded cellular that you'd like to share before we move on?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, and I apologize for being late. Is my microphone on? Can everybody hear me? Okay.
Put up a little bit higher.
There we go.
Great, thank you. Yeah, sorry I'm late. Keith Wims and I were reminiscing about Sam in an interview that I just did, and he mentioned that he talked about Sam in the keynote. I think one thing that's sort of fascinating to me is when you get to a point with bonded cellular, if you're in a location where there are a lot of people using their cell phones, and I think you alluded to this briefly, one of the things that news crews tend to have problems with is if they go into a place, especially overseas, where there's a lot of cell use in a very concentrated area, they actually have to boost up the bonded cellular to sort of jump from the close towers to towers beyond that. And during the Arab Spring, there were some classic examples where in Cairo, in Istanbul, on the squares, they wouldn't be able to get enough connectivity, but by using packages that could boost the bonded cellular, they could actually jump to the next tower and get the signal out.
And is that an option? I mean, is there an option somewhere in LiveView that says use next tower or boost my power so I can reach someone else? How do they go actually about boosting that? Do you know?
You know, there are some of the solutions are custom made where they basically increase the power significantly. Another one, and Casey and I were talking about this the last evening. You know, as you look at the sort of eSIM where you can change from one service provider to another through the same SIM, that's part of the technology that's coming along because, say, for instance, your classic pack has 2 Sprints, 2 Verizons, 2 AT&Ts, and you find you're in a place where the Verizon signal's stronger. What you would do there with an eSIM is roll over to 4 Verizons and 2 AT&Ts. So it's technological advances, but no, in the sort of standard packs, there's not something that says I can crank the power up significantly because that becomes ultimately becomes an RF licensing issue as well for everybody around you.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, well, let's move on to satellite. Some folks may think of satellite and go, oh, that's sort of old school, right? Big dishes on trucks, and maybe that's also really expensive because I've heard that rolling out a truck may cost me thousands of dollars a day. So it'd be interesting, I think, to hear from our panelists about maybe their experiences with satellite and also some of the recent innovations that have made satellite dishes smaller, more affordable, more portable, so that they're really much better for those sort of live and on-the-go streaming from remote locations situations. So first of all, can one of you just give a quick description of how a satellite solution works so we kind of set that groundwork?
I do a good bit with satellite.
Okay, go ahead,
so
Casey.
there's two main workflows that we use with satellite. One is taking a feed over a KU satellite with book a transponder, and you get a truck out there, and this is sort of the traditional broadcast workflow.
So this is where you have a truck, it comes with a dish that folds up and starts beaming to the sky.
And, you know, transponder time is something like probably $600 an hour for a slot on a transponder that will get you roughly like 17 megabits up.
And so that's basically buying a time slice on the satellite when you say that,
exactly.
Right? Okay.
And then you have to downlink that to a facility, and there's many different facilities. We have gear placed at one of these downlink facilities, so we just call up or send an email to traffic control, tell them the satellite coordinates and the time, they book it, and then the signal magically appears in my encoder the day of the event. And you know, this is a good workflow because if the budget allows, you have a really reserved connection, and you can get these pretty much anywhere in the world. There is global satellite coverage.
So you basically bought the bandwidth. You don't have to worry about any congestion, how many other cellular users in the area, all those issues go away.
That's right. And this is sort of borrowing from the traditional broadcast infrastructure and twisting it to use it for our live streaming purposes. There is a more modern approach, and we actually started using this before we started doing KU stuff. It's just how that worked out. And this is using data satellite. So there are companies like Viasat that run the Exceed broadband service, and some of you may know this from residential broadband. If you live out in the boonies, you can still get broadband internet. You set up this little 90-centimeter dish, looks like a DirecTV dish, and you get about, I don't know, 12 to 18 megabits down and 5 to 8 up. So definitely enough to do an HD stream. Without really getting into like their business model, I'll just talk about the workflow. So we can put an IP encoder on site, set up this little dish, takes about 10 minutes to point it if you've practiced with it, and you can get upstream bandwidth for a live stream practically anywhere. This is not reserved. It's not like a KU thing. The traffic will be prioritized because of their service packaging, but it is a shared medium. But they do have a good bit of capacity, and they launched a second satellite, which will be up and operational, I think, in the spring. So there's considerable amount of this satellite IP available, and it's describing the spectrum that the satellite uses. It's Ka band as opposed to Ku. And that's kind of neat because it's a straight IP workflow. Once you go into an encoder, it never touches baseband video again.
What do you see in latency on that?
So the round trip latency on that is about 650 milliseconds for the packets, which is typical of geosynchronous satellites. And this is the same thing that you get with KU. There is a 650 millisecond latency because half the time is to go up and half the time is to come back down. And that latency has interesting implications for the protocols that you use to transmit that data. And we'll get to that in a second. I don't want to jump the gun on that yet. So those are the two satellite workflows that we've used, and we've been successful with both of them. For one-off events that are maybe like an hour, but they have a high budget, let's say we're working with an agency for a big brand client, and they want to do an event in New York, and it's absolutely got to work. It's, in that case, easier to just get a satellite truck on the street and do it that way.
But you would find, and when I went to Exceed, the downsides of them, like someplace like New York, is you really need that sky line of sight.
That's true.
Yep.
And the angle of the line of sight to the satellite. This is, that small dish is what's called a narrow spot. So 10 minutes for a skilled operator to set up.
Yep.
If he's not skilled, it may take him a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
And that is one of the ironies of in the city, is you think about satellite, as Casey was saying, being out in the boonies, it's actually harder to spot it in the city because you're in these giant canyons than it is to do it out in
Although sometimes you can, depending on the buildings you're in, you can
bounce
actually
it off the glass.
Or actually, they can actually mount the portable dish on the roof.
Sure.
We've had the satellite trucks operators go and manage that because they're good at it.
New York is an interesting example.
Depends on the building, though.
There are certain satellites that are used almost exclusively by people doing broadcasts out of New York because it's laid out on a grid.
Yep.
You can park the satellite truck on this corner of the street, and you can always hit G17. You can always spot it. And if you're in a different city, you have other options with different satellites because there's a whole constellation of these KU satellites. Viasat is just one satellite. Right. It's basically over it's like 115 west or something, which is basically over San Diego, over the Pacific Ocean. And so you're always kind of shooting southwest from most of the US, and in a lot of places, in urban areas, it can be hard, unless you can get up on top of a building, it can be hard to get line of sight. So that is an important consideration.
One thing that I do want to mention on satellite, though, is I'd say the biggest risk with it is it works very well when you do have proper line of sight.
Exactly.
When it works great.
But weather is a real factor. Rain fade can cause some interference or take you off the air entirely. As I mentioned, we try and do everything with redundancy and diversity, right? So we wouldn't just bring 2 satellite trucks, we would bring a satellite truck and IP or something like that. The one time years ago that some budget decision was made, satellite's been working great, we'll just go with the one, we brought in 1 satellite truck. This was in Houston, and a major thunderstorm came rolling in out of nowhere, and we were off the air for 5 minutes. And it's like, okay, we're never doing that again. So satellite is great. We still use it today for our high-level things, and they can get to places that, we did an event out of the Mojave Desert, and it was, a KU band satellite, and they actually brought a trailer with the data so that we could also do an IP feed from there as well, hitting the different satellites. But we also find that KU band is used more commonly and less expensive comparatively. C-band will handle the weather phenomena better in general, but it's typically more expensive, and it's not used as often.
Yeah, you have to be a network to really do C-band. That transponder space is pretty locked.
Well, and also it's interesting to watch some of the satellite companies as they're putting up new birds, because I've been consulting with one company who's looking to put one up. They're also buying a lot of dark fiber up because they understand that they also need that redundancy if there is a rain fade situation.
Right. And to stratify it, I don't know what budget level you're looking at when you go to satellite, whether it's KU or KA. I find for my clients that basically I put in a budget number whenever the second that somebody mentions the satellite word, I just tell them $10,000. So, when we want to talk about cellular, bonded cellular, or house IP, we can talk about under $5,000 jobs. But the second that somebody says satellite, I just say, just for that line item, just let's put in today, let's put in 10 grand. Depending on a lot of variables. And you get variables with satellite KU too, of multiple hops across the country, of the way that it goes up to the satellite, and if you need to go across the country, you got to go across multiple transponders.
Especially if you're coming from Europe, it's a pretty
and each
big,
one of those transponders costs the money. And as I tell clients, it's in space.
Yeah.
It costs money.
It's hard to put up more of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Troy,
they kind of get that.
You mentioned your budgets are sort of 5,000.
Well, it depends on the job, but
Sure.
yeah, many jobs are at 5,000.
So I'm curious, you mentioned house IP, and my philosophy has always been never trust house IP, always have that redundancy. Do you have clients coming to you saying, we're only going to do it on our house IP, we know that we've got enough connectivity, we don't need the redundancy?
Well, and that becomes how you manage your client, right?
Okay.
It becomes managing client expectations. We work with a lot of major research universities. Mm-hmm. Their IT people come in and they apologize when it's less than 1 gig.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, you don't even get it. I need 5 meg. And so those guys and I tell the client, if you're willing to take the liability of if that piece of Ethernet goes down, you're toast, and they're at they know their house, great, it's all on you. And if it's a non-mission critical show, totally fine. If they went off the air for 30 seconds, so it's about managing the risk reward, right, for your client. But most of the time now, just because I call it $500 of belt and suspenders, I will add on cell bonded for $500 and bond their house line to multiple cellulars and their Wi-Fi, and I don't even have to worry about it. If someone
so it's a $500 insurance policy.
To me, and that's I don't know what anybody else wants to price it at, but to me, it's worth the insurance policy to my client for that much money, as long as it's not a way low budget show, which we get into, and which if you want to run on your house Wi-Fi network, if you want to run on your house Ethernet, but that way we're competitive and we're covering our costs for LiveView or Teradek or whoever you're using for your cell bond.
Right.
And one thing to note, just real quick on the satellite thing, before we move on, is that more and more of the satellite trucks you might bring in now are actually putting in other gear as well. Yeah. So it may be that if you do that, they're also bringing into their truck, in with their truck, cellular bonded solutions or LTN or other IP-based things as well. Yeah. So they can, it is expensive and it's not the right fit for every show, but at least, they're growing to kind of be a connectivity, transmission truck more than just the satellite truck.
Satellite, yeah, nice. Well, we've covered that one pretty well. Let's also talk about protocols. Oh, sorry, a couple questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask real quick. I think you may have mentioned it. Have you used data over KU before?
Can someone address that? Have you used data over KU before?
I don't think
I've done that recently, and it just allows you to get away from some of the needing specific satellites.
Right.
So you have a lot more options using the broadcast infrastructure with doing data over it.
Because it's data anyways.
Yeah, it's all the transport stream when you get down to it.
Data to them.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like no specific experience with what he's talking about. Okay.
No.
All right, something for us to look into. Another question.
Question about KA, a couple. You didn't mention a price per hour comparable to the KU. I know that the price
I didn't mention, I didn't say there was a price per hour for the KA because that's actually, I didn't want to get too far into their business model. But it's an event-based structure for the KA, which if you're doing an all-day event, it's actually way more cost-effective than KU for 8 or 10 or 12 hours. So if you're, let's say you're doing a music festival out in the sticks, that's a really good solution to getting out as opposed to renting a KU truck for 10 hours a day.
How do you deal with the fact that you're not buying dedicated bandwidth and it's very little like cellular?
So this has been an ongoing.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. So the question was, how do we deal with the fact that it is a shared, KA is a shared transmission medium? And so there's a couple of ways to do that. One is that on an engineering standpoint, we have an encoder that can adjust the outgoing bitrate transmission, and it is aware of the channel capacity. The second issue is one that I've brought up to the folks at Viasat a number of times. I'm specifying Viasat because I don't know of any other high-capacity KA operators in the U.S. So if there is, I'm not just trying to say there's one solution, but as far as I know, there's only one main provider for high-capacity KA. And so that is, they will prioritize the data. They can provision the terminal such that it gets priority on the channel. And then there are other engineering things that we're talking about that hopefully will come about to provide something closer to a dedicated capacity on it. But it is a shared medium. So yeah, that is an important caveat.
So the answer is you have to use the variable bitrate protocol.
I mean, there's nothing about H.264 that says it can't be a variable bitrate contribution. I mean, strictly speaking, it is already. It's just the encoders usually, some encoders try to maintain a constant bitrate, and some encoders don't support changing the bitrate on the outgoing bitrate. But there's nothing in the protocol itself or the format itself that prevents you from changing the bitrate wildly in your stream.
You're still using like an effective transport stream, but you're using variable encoder output?
Yeah. We have an encoder that can adjust the outbound bit rate on the fly. But this is just part of the bit stream. It's not any. I mean, it's a very easy thing to do, and it doesn't require any sort of like proprietary extensions or anything.
Cool. Yes. Another question.
More of a comment. So I'm a former satellite communications engineer.
Cool.
It kind of bugs me that people are referring to KA band as what I would call VSATs, shared VSAT services, and KA band being broadcast. They're both interchangeable.
Right.
EchoStar has in the US has a KU band VSAT service, and you can do single SCPC over KA band is perfectly fine. So around the world, I just want to challenge that.
Okay. Yeah. No, I wasn't. I was talking more to the typical business models.
So
Yeah.
simplistic use, so KA versus
And Casey, because you're most intimately familiar, can you just sort of summarize what he just said?
Yeah.
So
So
our audience at
the
home-
comment was that from a communications engineering standpoint, it's not that KA itself has to be a shared medium and KU is always a reserved medium. It's when I'm using sort of the frequency that the service operates over to describe a particular type of service and business model. So maybe that is a little bit unfair from a communication standpoint.
Okay.
Globally,
Right.
yeah.
All right, let's move ahead to our third topic, which is around protocols. So besides using bonded cellular and satellite to get past our first mile challenges, which typically bolt rather cleanly into an existing workflow, you can also change the streaming protocol itself. For example, you might replace the RTMP protocol with ZXI or SRT. Streaming technologies are not usually sold as bolt-in devices where you just buy an SRT device or a ZXI device, although that can also be done. But they're really designed to be built in typically at the encoding side and at perhaps your streaming media server side, where those technologies just have a library inherently built in that know how to handle these kinds of protocols for you. And they will help you get past network congestion and issues like that typically RTMP, RTSP, and HTTP will not. And primarily a lot of that is around the fact that they use UDP rather than TCP. TCP always requests confirmation that I've received the packet before it wants to send the next one. UDP will do a fire and forget model, and then you can do something called reliable UDP where you say, all right, I've gotten the last 100 packets. I noticed I just missed one. I'm going to send a message back saying I missed that one. And so it's a lot less chatty going back and forth from a protocol level. So it makes UDP rather ideal for broadcast. And in fact, in the early days of streaming, we always recommended that anyone doing live streaming use UDP, not TCP and HTTP as we do today for almost everything.
And this was MMS, right, with Microsoft?
Microsoft, yeah, MMS protocol, yeah, exactly. But that was over, you could use, we recommend using UDP rather than TCP with that in most cases. So some of the examples of protocol-based technologies that you may have heard of or may learn about on the floor are Zixi. There's something you can do with UDP called forward error correction. There's something Google's been pushing called Quick. There's ARQ. There's ProMPEG. And there's also the newest one called Secure Reliable Transport. And we won't spend much time on that, though we may talk about it a little bit, but there's a whole separate session on that tomorrow. Just on SRT. Okay, so panelists, what can you tell us about your experiences with or your thoughts on using protocols rather than, or maybe in conjunction with, some of these satellite and bonded cellular solutions? Like for example, I'll throw this out. I know that LiveView uses something that they call LiveRT, which is basically LiveView's reliable transport, similar to SRT. So obviously you can use these things together to have an even more robust solution. What are your thoughts? Everyone's looking at Casey.
Well,
Casey.
okay. I was going to say, Casey, you didn't want to jump ahead with FEC. Explain what FEC is.
Yeah, so there's two main, when you're using UDP, the fire and forget model is great, except that networks lose packets. If you're on any sort of public switch network, you will lose packets. And with UDP, there's two ways to fix this. One is forward error correction, where you send extra bits or extra packets, really, to help correct for the lost ones. This is sort of like, the same theory as like with RAID arrays and things like that. You send extra data to compensate for lost data. And then there's ARQ, which is a selective ask for packet. You realize that you've lost a packet, and then you can go back and ask for the send side to resend that packet. And so the send side needs to maintain a buffer of those packets, and you need to allocate latency in your transmission path. So you can say, okay, well, I can go back and request lost packets up to 2 seconds ago. And the different protocols and technologies are aware of that. We love using Zixi for all our stuff. We built it into the encoder about a year ago, and we use it for tons of stuff. And it fixes a number of problems. When you're even forgetting bonded cellular and other technologies, house internet, you can if you're going over a cable modem, let's say you're doing an event, they say, well, we've got cable modem, and it's a 10-up package. That should be plenty, right? And you're like, well, yes and no, but these technologies help deal with the fact that the cable operators do traffic shaping on their network in such a way that loves to drop packets. TCP, UDP, they don't care.
Right.
What happens a lot when you're using these type of lines, if you're doing an RTMP stream, for example, the stream will be going along fine, and then there'll be some packet loss. And then TCP, the protocol will request that the send side resend all of those packets. So now you're trying to send your stream, and you're trying to send those packets that were lost. And this can escalate very quickly if it causes more packet loss in doing so. And you have this like cascading failure, and this is when you see streams fail over, and then they cut off, and the RTMP protocol doesn't like this very much, and it'll stutter and speed up and do all sorts of crazy stuff. So going with these UDP technologies fixes a lot of that, no matter which medium you're using. For satellite, it's great because your latency is so high that to resend packets, you're already learning that you lost a packet like 600, 700 milliseconds later. So to be able to use forward error correction is a big help there. The other nice thing that I like about all these technologies is that when you go to UDP, it's sessionless, whereas TCP is session-based. And that enables a lot of the bonding. So you can split up, if you have, if you're using Zixi, I know you can send over multiple NICs. And so we can do that from our encoder. This is a much harder trick to do with RTMP unless you're setting up like a VPN or something like that, or bonded, sort of channel through networking stacks. You can just send over your two channels. It's UDP. It's not stateful, and it's a lot more flexible in that sense.
And I would add, and this will probably date me because this was what we had in video conferencing before I joined the streaming industry 19 years ago. Packet flooding is another form of FEC, where essentially if you got a 640K video conference, you're going to send out 768 even though you're saying that you're sending out 640. That's still applicable today for low latency bidirectional, where you're trying to stay under 250 milliseconds.
And that is the thing to look at with FEC, is that it, in general, you're going to be adding more overhead.
Yep.
and it works. But I do, we've been using Zixi for a couple years now, and now using SRT as well.
Mm-hmm.
And both of these are nice because they are UDP, so they're much less overhead than TCP by far. And they've been great for low latency connections. And they both allow for, well, the Zixi today actually allows for when we're talking about back pressure, where, it is part of that, the little bit of information it sends back, it's saying, hey, you're not getting through, okay, I need to lower the bandwidth. Now, not all encoders have that built in, but the capability is there for the ones that do, and it sounds like yours does.
Yeah.
And SRT, same thing, is capable of that. I know, High Vision kind of started SRT, and they're adding that feature to their existing line of encoders to do that same thing as well.
Yeah. So yeah, the tooling is coming along really nicely for these newer technologies and platforms, and we're kind of just borrowing tricks from the broadcast world and other
and
facets of the
we can sort of mask a lot of that too with HTTP delivery, because we're going to have to wait 2 seconds for a segment to form to begin with. Where with RTSP and RTMP, the expectation was it was going to come up a lot faster too.
Well, and what we found and it depends on the bit rate and some other factors, but with RTMP, when you get up around 200 milliseconds of network latency, or some jitter in there and stuff, unless you're adding a lot of buffering at the ends, so you're going to have a lot more, video latency. That's about when it starts to fail, and these UDP protocols can handle a lot more. So when you're talking about, that satellite-based networking, you're talking about up to 600 milliseconds. RTMP at most bit rates is going to struggle there.
Yeah, I think it also helps a lot looking forward for higher bit rate contributions. There's a lot more efficiency there because you're not getting all of these ACK packets back all the time.
Right.
We've run our encoders up to like 80 megabits a second to do dual 4K streams, and we tried it over RTMP first, and it's just like Windows and they're not happy sending out single data rate streams at that speed consistently, and that goes back to the network stack. So I think.
And I know I've seen test results now showing that protocols like SRT and Zixi can, in some cases over a poor connection like a DSL connection or something like this, can improve the throughput by 7.5 times is what I saw in one test, where they tried using standard RTMP, they didn't get much throughput, and then they tried it with SRT in this case, and they got 7.5 times the throughput over the same line by changing nothing else. Anyway, we need to wrap it up. Thank you to our panelists for being here and sharing information about bonded cellular and satellite and the streaming protocols, the reliable streaming protocols. I mentioned it earlier, I'll mention again, session A202 tomorrow is all about secure, reliable transport. So if you want to dive into the protocol section a little bit more and ask that panel questions, actually Jeff's on that panel as well. Feel free to join A202 tomorrow for that, which will be just down the hall here. If you have any other questions that we didn't get to, please stop by afterwards, and the panelists will hang around for a few minutes to answer those questions. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of the show.